The sheriff's hand was still in the air when everyone in the diner realized they'd just witnessed something they could never unsee. Thought it was a Thursday morning at Ruby's Diner, the kind of place where the coffee was always hot and the conversations never stopped. The sun filtered through fingerprint smudged windows, casting long shadows across red vinyl booths that had seen better decades. Emma Rodriguez moved between tables with the practiced grace of someone who'd been doing this for years, balancing plates and refilling cups without breaking stride. She was 23, saving every tip for nursing school, and she smiled at customers even when her feet ached and her lower back screamed for rest. Sheriff Cole Bradshaw sat in his usual corner booth, the one that gave him a view of the entire diner. He'd been coming here for 15 years, ever since he'd pinned that badge to his chest, and in that time, he'd grown comfortable. Too comfortable. The kind of comfortable that turns into entitlement when no one's watching close enough. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Emma approached his table with a fresh pot of coffee, her smile already fading because she knew what was coming. She'd served Bradshaw 100 times, and each visit left her feeling smaller than the last. Today, her hands trembled slightly as she reached for his cup. About time, Bradshaw grunted, not looking up from his phone. This coffee's been cold. For 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Sheriff. We've been slammed this morning. Emma's voice was steady, professional. The kind of steady that comes from swallowing words you really want to say. He looked up then, his eyes cold and assessing. You know what your problem is, sweetheart? You're soft. This whole generation is soft. Can't handle a little pressure without falling apart. The diner had gone quieter. Not silent, that would have been too obvious, but quieter. The kind of quiet where people pretend they're not listening while hanging on every word. Emma felt the weight of those eyes on her back, felt the familiar burn of humiliation climbing up her neck. She turned to walk away. That's when Bradshaw's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. I'm not done talking to you, he said, his grip tight enough to hurt. You walk away from me again, and I'll make sure. Let her go. The voice came from the counter, low and level, carrying the kind of authority that doesn't need volume. Emma's eyes snapped toward the sound. A man sat on one of the spinning stools, someone she hadn't noticed before. He was maybe 35, with close-cropped hair and the kind of stillness that suggested coiled energy rather than relaxation. His coffee sat untouched in front of him. Bradshaw's face flushed red. Excuse me? You heard me. The man turned slowly on his stool, and Emma saw his eyes for the first time. They were gray, like storm clouds, and they held something that made her breath catch. Let her go. Bradshaw released Emma's wrist and stood, his considerable frame rising to full height. He was a big man, 6'3", and built like someone who'd played football in high school and never quite let go of that glory. You got any idea who you're talking to, friend? I know exactly who I'm talking to. The stranger's voice remained calm, almost conversational. Question is, do you know who you just put your hands on? The sheriff's laugh was ugly. Meant to. Intimidate. Some waitress who needs to learn her place. That's when it happened. Bradshaw's hand came up faster than a man his size should move, and connected with Emma's cheek with a crack that echoed off the diner's walls like a gunshot. The force of it sent her stumbling backward into a table, coffee cups rattling, silverware clattering to the floor. Her hand flew to her face, tears springing to her eyes, not from pain but from shock, from the sheer violation of it, for exactly 3 seconds. The entire diner held its breath. The stranger was off his stool and across the floor before Emma's hand had even touched her burning cheek. He moved with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural, closing the distance between himself and Bradshaw in heartbeats. His hand caught the sheriff's wrist mid-reach. Bradshaw had been going for his belt, probably his taser, and twisted it backward with surgical precision. Bradshaw yelped, dropping to one knee. You're assaulting an officer. I'll have you arrested. No, the stranger said quietly. You won't. He released Bradshaw's wrist and stepped back, hands loose at his sides. Ready, but you're going to apologize to her. Right now. The sheriff's face was purple now, rage and embarrassment mixing into something dangerous. He stood rubbing his wrist, and Emma saw his other hand drift toward the gun at his hip. Her heart lurched. This was going to get someone killed. Marcus? The name came from the doorway, spoken by someone with enough weight behind it to make everyone turn. A woman in a state police uniform stood there, her expression carved from granite. Captain's bars gleamed on her collar. Step away from the sheriff. The stranger Marcus didn't move. Captain Chun, didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same about you. Captain Chun walked into the diner, her eyes taking in the scene with practiced assessment. Emma's reddening cheek, Bradshaw's defensive posture. The frozen witnesses. Someone want to tell me what happened. This man attacked me. Bradshaw's voice was loud, confident, the voice of someone used to being believed without question. I was sitting here, minding my own business, and he hit the waitress first, said an elderly man from a corner booth, his voice trembling but determined. Grabbed her wrist, then slapped her across the face. We all saw it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the diner. Heads nodded. Emma watched something shift in Captain Chen's expression, something that made Bradshaw's confident posture deflate slightly. Is that true, miss? Chan asked Emma directly. Emma's voice came out, smaller than she wanted it to. Yes, ma'am. Chun turned to Bradshaw, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sheriff Bradshaw, you're going to remove your badge and your weapon and place him on the counter. Right now. You can't have jurisdiction here. Not. Anymore, you don't. Chun's words were crisp, final. State police have received 17 complaints about you in the last 6 months. Harassment, abuse of power, assault. We've been building a case. Thanks to everyone here, we now have witnesses to add to it. She thought it was over. She was wrong, because Marcus stepped forward then, pulling something from his wallet. Emma caught a glimpse of it before he handed it to Chen, some kind of identification that made the captain's eyebrows rise. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, Naval Special Warfare, Chun read aloud, and Emma's world tilted slightly. Currently on leave? She looked at Marcus with new respect. You're a long way from the teams, Commander. Just passing through, Marcus said quietly. Wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe the right place, right time. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur. More state police arrived. Bradshaw was led out in handcuffs, still sputtering about rights and lawyers and people who didn't know who they were messing with. Witnesses gave statements. Emma sat in a booth, an ice pack pressed to her cheek. Watching it all happen like a movie she wasn't quite part of. Marcus sat down across from her eventually, after the crowd had thinned and the chaos had settled into paperwork and quiet conversations. You okay? He asked. Emma laughed, surprising herself. I've been asking myself that same question for about a year now. Every time he came in here, every time he looked at me like I was nothing, ... She shook her head. Thank you. You didn't. I have to do that. Yeah, Marcus said simply. I did. I've seen what happens when good people stay silent. Seen it overseas. Seen it here. Can't always do something about it, but when I can ... He shrugged, the gesture somehow encompassing everything. He didn't say. A Navy SEAL, Emma said, shaking her head in wonder. Of all the diners in all the towns? He smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his face. Ruby's has the best coffee within 50 miles. Did my research? 2 weeks later, Emma stood in Ruby's diner again, but everything had changed. The local news had run the story. Corrupt sheriff arrested after assaulting waitress. Navy SEAL intervenes. The community had rallied around her. A legal fund had been started. The nursing school she'd applied to had reached out, offering a scholarship specifically for her, citing her courage in speaking up. Marcus had stayed in town longer than he planned, making sure she was okay, making sure the case against Bradshaw was solid. Today was his last day before heading back to Virginia Beach. You going to be all right? He asked, accepting his final cup of Ruby's famous coffee. Emma smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Yeah, for the first time in a long time. I think I really will be. He nodded, standing to leave. At the door, he paused and turned back. Hey, Emma. Yeah? You were never nothing. Don't let anyone make you believe you were. She watched him walk out into the morning sun, watched him disappear around the corner, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not just gratitude, but something bigger. The understanding that sometimes courage looks like standing up for yourself. And sometimes it looks like a stranger who refuses to look away because courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just sits down, orders coffee, and waits for the moment when silence needs to be broken. And in a small diner in a small town where the coffee was always hot and the conversations never stopped, silence had finally been shattered by the sound of someone saying enough. If this story touched you, drop a comment below and let me know. And if you believe that standing up for what's right never goes out of style, hit that subscribe button. More stories of everyday courage coming your way soon.